Good morning, dear Sangha. Most respected Thai, dear Sangha, today is the 22nd of September in the year 2019, and we are in the Assembly of Stars Meditation Hall in the Lower Hamlet on our day of mindfulness. And we shall begin by listening to the 3 sounds of the bell. You can enjoy the sound of the rain and the feeling of your breath in your body. Dear Sangha, about 30 years ago, we were having a picnic with Thai in the upper hamlet. And we were sitting where there used to be a forest, but now there is the monks' residence. Yeah. Well, not exactly a forest, the green grass with some trees. And it was a beautiful day, and we put our hammock between the trees after we had the picnic, and we lay down to have a siesta, and then it started to rain very hard. So we had to go back to the nearest building for shelter, and the nearest building was the stone house, which had a veranda, and we sat on the veranda, and Thai said, Chan Duc, write a song about the rain. I don't know. Yeah. The rain is falling, oh, so softly, washing every leaf of every tree, washing every care. Namo Balokiteshvaraya. Namo Balokiteshvaraya. The rain is of joy for 10,000s of beings. Namo Avalokiteshvaraya. Namo Avalokiteshvaraya. So, dear Sangha, in this song we can see that the climate outside of us and the emotions and mental formations inside of us are not two separate things. When we see the rain wash the leaf of the tree, we also feel that our worry is washed away. Because we are children of the earth, we are the earth. So whatever happens to the earth, it also happens to us. And that is an insight that we've had for a very long time. We didn't have to wait for climate change to have that insight. But before climate change took place, people had forgotten that they were the earth, and therefore they didn't take care of the earth, and at the same time they didn't take care of themselves. But now we have that opportunity to see that we are the earth, and that means that every time we take care of ourselves, we take care of the earth, and every time we take care of the earth, we take care of ourselves. And when I say ourself, I really mean ourselves. Yeah, I really mean ourselves, because we are not separate from each other. If I take care of myself, I'm taking care of you, my fellow human being, and I'm taking care of you, animal species, the plant species, and the mineral species. We are very lucky in a way to be living in this time, because it's a time of urgency, and it's a time that forces us to look deeply at our relationship with the earth and our relationship with each other. And if we did not have the threat that we might not be here very long, we might be lazy to make that effort. That is one human characteristic, is a little bit lazy. And the Buddha said that we are fortunate to be born human beings, because if we are born a god, then maybe everything is going our way and we feel very happy and everything's okay. And so we don't really get down to the practice. But when we're a human being, there's quite a bit of things are not okay, and quite a bit of suffering. And so that is an impulse for us to practice. So today we have to talk about the Bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is sometimes translated as the mind of love, sometimes translated as the mind of awakening. And we have the same word bodhi in the word bodhisattva. And citta means our mind, and bodhi means awake, awakening. It's the same root as the word for Buddha. If you are Russian, you know that the word for wake up is also from the same root, Buddha. So we need to wake up. Homo sapiens needs to wake up and become Homo. I can't remember the Latin word for being awake. Vigilatus or something. Vigilatus, yeah. We need to become man awake rather than Homo sapiens, a name we gave to ourselves. I don't know whether we gave it to ourselves very correctly. Sapiens means wise, but I don't know that we're always so wise. But enough of this kind of wisdom, we need to go forward and become awake. And we're lucky because we have the teachings of mindfulness. And mindfulness is what keeps us awake, makes us awake. A bodhisattva means a being who is waking up, or a being who is helping other beings to wake up. And now, as a species, we have an opportunity to practice waking up. And every generation, every era that the human species has been here on planet Earth, there have been things that we've needed to wake up to. And now the thing we need to wake up to is that we've done a lot of damage. We are still doing a lot of damage as a human species. Geologists call our age the Anthropocene. Yeah, the age that is made by the geology is made by the humans. It's not made by natural processes in the earth anymore. If you take a look at the earth, you will find many chicken bones in it. And those chicken bones, they come from human beings eating too many chickens. So as human beings, we are making Mother Earth what she is becoming. And we are children of Mother Earth. So we want to wake up. And we want to wake up to the fact that we are interconnected with everything on the earth. And what better opportunity than when you are eating a meal, eating in mindfulness, relating to the food that you are eating. When I was when I was a teenager, in my early 20s, I suffered from something called anorexia nervosa. This means that I didn't eat. I didn't want to eat anything. And it's very damaging for my body. And it's also damaging for my mind. And it planted seeds in my body and my mind, which shall harm myself. And so I realized at that time I was also harming my Mother Earth. I was also harming my genetic mother and father, who had to worry a lot about me. But at the time I was not aware of what I was doing. I did not have the Bodhicitta, the mind that was awake. I was not the waking up Bodhisattva. It took me some time to realize what I was doing. And eating mindfulness, eating in mindfulness is what can restore my right relationship with what I'm eating. So I'm very grateful for the practice of mindful eating. And when I put something in my mouth, I put a spoon of millet in my mouth, I feel closely connected to the whole universe. I feel connected to the sun, to the stars, and to the earth under my feet, and the atmosphere around me, which contains the clouds and the rain. And I feel all these things are coming together to nourish me. And my heart is filled with gratitude. And I know that as a child of the earth, that I'm being nourished by the earth. And as I eat in mindfulness, I'm also aware of where the food comes from. And if the food that I am eating is contributing to global carbon footprint. So I have to be aware how far away the food has come from, what kind of transport the food used to come to me. And I still see that when I eat, there is some carbon footprint in what I eat. But that does not take away my joy of eating, because although I want to minimize the carbon footprint of what I eat, at the same time I know that the most important thing is my relationship to Mother Earth, to the atmosphere. And when I feel that deep gratitude in me, and that deep aspiration to take care of the earth as I take care of myself, I know that I am doing the very best that I can. So we said that Bodhicitta means, literally, it means the mind of awakening. But Thai has translated this into English as the mind of love, as if awakening and love are not two separate things. And we know also that understanding and love are not two separate things. So when I sit and I eat a meal, I am also aware of my brothers, my sisters, who are eating with me, because they also are the earth. They also are children of the earth. And if I cannot understand them and love them, then I cannot understand and love the earth either. So a mealtime is not just being grateful for the food, feeling love for Mother Earth and the universe that has produced the food, but it's also feeling grateful to our brothers and sisters who are with us, and feeling love for our brothers and sisters who are with us. During the day, I keep alive with my mindfulness and with the use of the gathas, my awareness of Mother Earth. When I wash my hands, I wash my hands that all may have hands blessed to save this planet Earth. And I know that when I wash my hands, I want to be 100% there, because I'm in touch with the water, And the water is such a precious gift of the earth and the sky. And we know that sources of clean water in the earth are drying up. The aquifers are drying up. Those great underground rivers that used to be there are no longer there. And so clean water is a precious, precious gift. And I want to do my best not to waste it. Even though it's very difficult sometimes to adjust the tap so that too much water doesn't come out, it is a joy for me to be able to adjust it so that just the right amount of water that I need comes out. And I can catch that water in a bowl. I don't have to let it keep flowing, and then I can take the water in from the bowl and wash my face. So these things are not an effort. It doesn't take an effort to do that. I don't have to force myself to do this, because I am the earth, and the earth is me. And when I take care of the earth, I take care of the water, I'm taking care of me. And there are so many things that we do during the day which can keep us in our relationship, our right relationship with the earth. And of course the most important one is walking on the earth. On Friday, some of us had an opportunity to walk on the earth for maybe 2 hours. And we really had to concentrate, or at least I did, because there's a lot of noise going on around. And if I wasn't careful, I would lose my concentration. So I had to use the gatha. I used the gatha. I am home. I have arrived. In the here, in the now. I am solid. I am free. In the ultimate, the realm of no birth and no death, I dwell. And practice that solidly. And the next morning when I woke up, I was still practicing because 2 hours is quite a long time to practice one gatha. But this gatha is very important for us who are taking care of the earth. First of all, we see the earth as our home. And secondly, we see that we have arrived where we are. And this is a teaching of Plum Village. The 3 times into R. The past, the present, and the future. They are not 3 separate realities. Some schools of Buddhism say that the past, the present, and the future, they exist as separate realities. Some say there is only the present moment. And Thai in Plum Village has taught us that the 3 times into R. So when I have arrived in the present moment, it does not mean to say that the past is not there and that the future is not there. The best way I can take care of the future is to take care of the present moment. And the present moment is what it is because of the past moment. So I have arrived. It's important. it's important to keep myself in the present moment in order to take care of the future. That doesn't mean to say that I close my eyes, that I'm not awake to what could happen in the future. And the reason I know what could happen in the future is because I know what's happening in the present. Of course, we care very much about keeping to 1.5 degrees. And we know the ways we can do this, and we're aware of all that. But we have to practice to keep ourselves solid, to keep ourselves free in the present moment. Otherwise we will burn out and we will not be able to do the things that we want to do in order to be able to help the earth. So when you become a monk or a nun, it is said that you become a monk or a nun because of the Bodhichitta, because of the mind of awakening, because of the mind of love, which is there in the stored consciousness of all of us. And when you shave your head, the first time and every time after, you say a poem. I don't know in English. Shedding my hair completely, I make the great vow today, that all people will transform their afflictions, and we will all go, all species will go to the other shore. So that in that nguyện cho mọi người dứt hết phiền não, độ thoát cho đời, for the world, yeah. And we can take the world and all its species to the other shore. That is a very strong vow. And when you vow deeply like that on the day when you shave your head, you are realizing that you are not separate from all species. You are not separate from all human beings. And your suffering and their suffering is not two separate things. And so you come into the monastery in order to be able to, first of all, transform your own afflictions, and then you see that transforming your own afflictions is helping other people to do it. You don't have to make an effort to help other people to transform their afflictions. When you've transformed their own, you quite naturally will do that. And that is the Bodhicitta. And the other gatha that you will read when you receive your robe. How beautiful is the robe of a monk or a nun. It's a field of all good seeds. I bow my head to receive it today and vow to wear it life after life. I used to think that. Now I'm 70. I don't think I live much longer. So maybe I will avoid all the climate change. But then I saw that it's wrong thinking. It is wrong view. It is the view of annihilation that I will cease to exist. I won't have to go through climate change. Yesterday I saw a poster on Friday. It said, you will die from old age, but we will die from climate change. That is written by a young person. I used to think like that too, but I don't think like that anymore. I know I will continue. I know I will be there in maybe a slightly different form to go through climate change. So I vow to wear my robe life after life, not just for this lifetime, because I know that my practice as a solid practitioner will be needed in future lifetimes also. So these two gathas, in a way, they represent the Bodhicitta. I remember when I was young, I was a layperson, I wanted to go and do something to help the world. And that is Bodhicitta. We don't think about our own comfort. We think about doing something to really help. And I wanted there to be peace in the world. I didn't want there to be nuclear armaments. And that morning I got up. I told myself, I'm not going to sleep in the house anymore. I'm going to sleep outside. So I slept that night outside. And it was freezing. The temperature was below 0. But I slept in my sleeping bag. It wasn't too bad. In my sleeping bag, it was above freezing. And then, with my sleeping bag and a pair of rubber boots, I said, I'm going to Greenham Common. And I felt so free. I felt like a bird that had been let out of its cage. And I walk until my feet couldn't walk anymore. Yeah. I felt that wonderful sense of freedom. You have the whole world before you, and you have your aspiration to do something for the world, because the world is not you. The world is you. You do something for the world, you do it for yourself. Breathe and you know that you are alive. Breathe and you know that all is helping you. Breathe and you know that you are the world. Breathe and you know that the flower is breathing too. Breathe for yourself and you breathe for the world. Breathe in compassion and breathe out joy. So that is one of the wrong views in Buddhism is that I am the world and the world is me. So that wrong view is a little bit in that song. But when I say that I am the world, I mean I inter-am with the world. The world is not a separate self-entity. I am not a separate self-entity. So becoming a nun is a little bit like that. It's having a deep aspiration to do something for the world. And you just get up and you go and you do that. And you don't worry too much about your comfort. So awareness of impermanence is also an important contribution to our bodhicitta. And we all know that there are two kinds of impermanence. There's the kind of impermanence that is happening at every second, every instant. You are not the same person as when you came into this hall. Cells have died in your body, and new cells have been born. And the feelings you had when you came in are different from the feelings you had now. And your perceptions are different. Your mental formations are different. Your consciousness is different. So it's that instant impermanence that's happening at every instant is one kind. And then there's the impermanence when some major change happens in your life. You are no longer a child, you are a teenager. You're no longer middle-aged, you're old. Your death certificate is signed. Those kind of things we call the cyclical impermanence. And maybe 65 million years ago, when we don't quite know why, but maybe a meteorite hit our dear Mother Earth, then 3/4 of the species on Earth went extinct. And that was a cyclical impermanence. And now we are also facing a cyclical impermanence. The end of the human species, maybe. The end of life on Earth, at least temporarily, the end of life on Earth, until Earth recovers enough to be able for life to come about again, because the sun will be there for billions of years more to support life on Earth. So even if we destroy everything now, maybe a rebirth in the future. So this cyclical impermanence, this awareness of impermanence is so important. We have this gatha which we use when we're angry. Being angry. I know I'm angry in the historical dimension. I close my eyes. It's very important to close your eyes. Don't look at the person who's making you angry. It'll only water the seed of anger in you. I close my eyes and look deeply. 300 years from now, where will you be? And where shall I be? And when we remind ourselves that I'm impermanent, I'm not going to be here much longer. You're impermanent. You're not going to be here much longer. If we can remind ourselves of that, all we want to do is take the other person in our arms and say, we're so grateful that you're still there. And when I was staying in Israel, in Palestine one time, the people there told me I was staying with that every day when my partner goes to work, I don't know if I will see him or her in the evening. And so we relish each moment of having breakfast together. And when we hug each other before going to work, we know that it may be the last time. And so it's a very deep hug. When you hug somebody deeply, and you breathe in and you breathe out, you just follow your breathing, and then you will recognize how wonderful this person is warm, this person is alive. And you also recognize it won't always be like that. I won't always be warm and alive, nor will the other. And when you recognize that, you see how important this moment is. This moment is the most important moment of our life. And you enjoy it deeply, and you enjoy it fully. And you may do as Blake did and see eternity in an hour. Well, not in an hour. Eternity in a second, in a minute. So it's the same when I contemplate on the impermanence of Mother Earth. It makes me want to enjoy every moment on Mother Earth. I want to enjoy all the beauties of nature, everything that is wonderful on the earth. I want to enjoy it deeply because I don't know how long it will be there for. So in a way, I'm grateful to that not knowing. I think the dinosaurs, they didn't know that a meteorite was going to hit the planet and they were going to become extinct. So they didn't have the chance to enjoy every moment. Well, we do have a bit of time. We're in a bit of a different situation from the dinosaurs, which means that we can enjoy every moment. And enjoying our relationship with the earth, enjoying what is beautiful on the earth. We don't have to make an effort to conserve it. We just do it out of love. And Thầy, in his book, Love Letters to the Earth, tells us that Thầy is in love with the earth. Every time before Thầy goes outside for a walk, Thầy tells himself, oh, I'm going to meet my loved one. I'm going to see all those beautiful and wonderful things. And Thầy said that if we can have a relationship of falling in love with the earth, that is the best thing that we can do to take care of the earth. And if we don't have that relationship, it's possible that we will not be able to take care of the earth. Some of us really become burnt out trying to take care of the earth. Some of us put a lot of pressure on ourselves to do things to keep taking care of the earth. But we forgot about ourselves. We forgot to take care of ourselves. We forgot that we are a child of the earth. So just to be able to do nothing is also a way of taking care of the earth. To sit peacefully on the earth, restore yourself, to rest and do nothing. You may say, I'm not doing anything to take care of the earth, but you are. With every breath that restores you, you are helping the earth. This morning when we were practicing the guided meditation before the Dharma talk, when we got to the tongue, I thought we were going to be aware of the taste of the rain on our tongue. So I was practicing that in advance of it. So when we talk about bodhicitta, we could talk about my bodhicitta, but I think it might be not right to talk about my bodhicitta, because bodhicitta is a seed in consciousness. It's a seed in the collective consciousness, not just in my consciousness. And it's been handed down from my ancestors. My mother, my father, even though they may not have known it, they also have the bodhicitta. And so when you practice the meditation on your mother and your father as 5-year-old children, you don't just see only that your mother and father suffered as 5-year-old children. Oh, that's very important to see that, so that you can give rise to compassion for your mother and father. But you also see that your mother and your father, as 5-year-old children, had the bodhicitta, had the mind of love. And therefore they have the capacity to transform their suffering. And they've handed that capacity on to you. You look at the children, you can see that intuitively they know how to offer love to others. So sometimes in Christianity you say that you have to be a child in order to enter the kingdom of God. And every day we want to walk on the earth as if we are walking in the kingdom of God, as if we are walking in the pure land. I used to think that the earth was not a perfect place. There would be somewhere better. There must be somewhere better. Somewhere you can go to when you die. But then I recognized that everything I need is here on earth. And when I die, I just want to go back to the earth. And if I'm not able to go back to the earth when I'm alive, it'll be very difficult to go back to the earth when I die. So every day I want to practice going back to the earth and seeing the earth as paradise, seeing the earth as the kingdom of God. Because it's said that the Pure Land, it's not something outside of you. The Pure Land arises in our mind. I feel very grateful to people who take the risk of being arrested by demonstrating, by doing non-violent resistance. And I see that their bodhicitta is strong. But I also feel concern. I think Mahatma Gandhi knew very well how to take care of himself. And he could keep the mind of love alive. And if we have love in our heart, and we have compassion in our heart, it's what protects us most of all. So even when we're being arrested, we can feel compassion, we can feel love. And that is important. Because if, as someone who puts themselves at risk of being arrested because they want to do something good for the world, but they don't feel love in their heart, they don't feel compassion, then they're not doing the thing that would be most helpful for the world. So, the Buddha at one time taught a very famous discourse. It's called Kesaputiya Sutta, and some people they call it the Kalama Sutta. And this the Buddha taught this sutta to young people, and they were very confused because this town of Kesaputiya, many shramanas, many religious teachers liked to go there. And so the Kalama young people had a chance to listen to so many Dharma talks. Maybe they get as many Dharma talks as we do here. But one thing about here is that mostly we Dharma teachers, we agree with each other. If every week we say the opposite to what the person had said before, then you would be in the same kind of confusion as the Kalamas were. So some people would come and they would say, whether you do a good thing or whether you do a bad thing, it doesn't matter. Because there's no such thing as retribution. We call karmic retribution. There's no karmic retribution. Karmic retribution means that you do something good, you will have merit, and you will enjoy some kind of merit. And you do something bad, and you have demerit, and you will suffer. So that is what is meant by karmic retribution. And then other teachers would come along and they would say, if you do something bad, that when you die you will go to hell. If you do something good, when you die you'll be reborn as a god or a human. And so the Kalama, they were very confused. And they said, oh, the Buddha is coming. The Buddha is enlightened. The Buddha can remove our confusion. And so when the Buddha came, they asked. So many teachers come and they all tell us that they are teaching the truth, but their truth, they contradict each other. So we're very confused. Can you help? And the Buddha said, you're right to be confused. It's very confusing. So I understand that. But you have to, before you believe something, you have to experience it for yourself. If you do something and you feel well, and you see that others around you feel well, then you may know that that is beneficial. If you do something and you don't feel good and others don't, you know that that's not beneficial. But that's not enough. It's not quite enough. Because, like I said when I was young, I have anorexia nervosa. It's not good for me. It's not good for other people. But at the time I wasn't aware. Yeah. So I needed some good, kind, spiritual friend to come along and try and help me see the root of this and try and help me to transform it. So in this sutra the Buddha also says, is this something that the wise ones would approve of? Your good spiritual friends would approve of? It's also a question you have to ask yourself. Yeah. And then the Buddha tells the Kalamas, if you can develop the mind of love, the Bodhicitta, if your heart has no enmity in it, then you can be sure that you have peace and joy in the present moment. Krishna Dharma Sukha Vihari. And if there is such a thing as merit, then there will be happiness from that deed in the future. The Buddha didn't want to say that you will be happy in the future. You will have merit and that will make you happy in the future. Because if the Buddha taught like that, it would mean there was a separate self. There is a separate me who is doing good now, and that same separate me will have happiness in the future. And that is not the teaching of the Buddha. It is the teaching of eternalism, the opposite of annihilation. So we know that when there is the mind of love, there is happiness here and now. And if we understand, and we have seen for ourselves, that in the future, that the future inter-is with the present, then we can say that basing on this mind of love now, there is mind of love in the future. You don't have to say my mind of love will bring me happiness in the future. So when we are allowing ourselves to be arrested, we are living outside like at Greenham, no tent, Is the mind of love there? Or are we always fighting? Are we always thinking about the enemy and seeing ourselves as separate from the guards who are guarding the missiles as our enemy? One time I was in a local sangha somewhere. I went to lead a retreat, and I said, I was in Greenham Common in 1980 something, I don't know, 80, 81 or something. He said, I was there too. But he said, I was on the other side. I was one of the soldiers on the other side. And then we both found ourselves in the same sangha. So we need to keep this mind of love alive. And if in we feel that our mind of love is no longer alive enough, it's only understandable. Sometimes the situation is so hard that it's difficult to keep the mind of love alive. So there's nothing wrong with that. It's natural. But the important thing is to recognize mind of love is not there, and I need to withdraw. I need to do something different, rather than just resisting all the time. Non-violent resistance. I have to do something like planting trees, which will nourish me more and help the mind of love to come back. So this is sometimes I see a little bit danger of people who are for many years, for decades, are in some kind of resistance. But I'm very grateful to them, but we have to remember the mind of love. So that is the first reassurance. We know that when the mind of love, there is peace and happiness here and now. And that peace and happiness, if we see that the 3 times into R, we can see that it's also in the future. So the second is, we can be sure, and the second is when. Or since the 3 times. But the Buddha said, you don't have to believe that the 3 times into are. It's something you have to experience, not something you believe. So if you don't experience that and you say, you can forget about the future, and just all the same you can know that these are the most important things, the number 1 and the number 3. But don't think that suffering is something bad. Don't think that we need to get rid of suffering. We talk about the Bodhichitta, and in the Buddhist teachings of the Mahayana, it says clearly that the afflictions, the klesha, the suffering is the Bodhi. The klesha the awakening is the afflictions, is the suffering. So it means that the enmity that you feel, it can be the ground for the Bodhi, for the awakening. Because in Buddhism we don't want to make 2 camps. We don't want to make a camp of the good and a camp of the evil. And Thai used to say that. In the past, Thai said that, do not make man your enemy. Your enemy is greed, hatred, confusion. But Thai one day said Thai didn't want to say that anymore. Greed, hatred and confusion are no longer your enemy. They are the mud out of which the lotus can bloom. But we have enough mud already, so we don't want to make any more. We have enough suffering for us to give rise to awakening. We don't need to make any more. So we want to try and avoid making more suffering if we can. We just want to use the suffering that's already there in order to help us to wake up, to be awake. So I don't know if you can think of a name for the species that we want to become. Thai suggested we talk about Homo conscious, the aware man. If we can talk about the interbeing man, I think it would be nice. In Buddhism, we have the Vajracchedika Sutra, the Dharma that cuts through illusion. And in that sutra it talks about 4 kinds of wrong perception, which are very linked to the awakening that we need to have now. And the first wrong perception is that I am a separate self. And the second wrong perception is that the human species is separate from the other species. And the third wrong perception is that the living species, that is those of us who can move around, are separate from the non-living species. The animals are different from the plants, and the minerals are separate. And the last wrong perception is that we have a lifespan. Our life is limited. We have a birthday and a death day, and we only live between our birthday and our death day. You only need to go into the forest and look at the leaves under your feet, and you will know there's no such thing as birth separate from death. Everything is in a wonderful cycle of transformation. The leaf doesn't go anywhere when it falls from the tree. It goes back to the earth, and it becomes the nourishment for the young leaf that is born on the tree. And actually, while the leaf was on the tree, it was already nourishing the tree. So the leaf has gone into the tree while it was alive, and when the leaf is on the ground, it also goes into the tree. So the leaf has no beginning and no end. And if we can see ourselves as leaves, nourishing the earth while we are alive on the earth, and going back to the earth when we have our death certificate, in order to nourish new life on the earth, then we have no more fear. And as someone who has no more fear, we are really able to be useful and beneficial to the world. And so part of the Bodhicitta is that deep desire that we all have to realize the truth of no birth and no death that can take us beyond fear. And that is not just something for a monk or a nun to do. It is something that all of us, the fourfold Sangha, need to have the time to do. Because as a monk or a nun, we can be busy. We can have many projects, things we want to do to help the world. They may sound very good, but we are busy, and we don't have the time to come back to ourselves and stop and look deeply. And a lay person is the same. You can be very busy going to work, bringing up your family. You don't have the time to stop and look deeply into the matter of no birth and no death. But a monk or a nun, a layman or a laywoman, we can give ourselves, we can organize our life so that we have time to look deeply into impermanence. And to look deeply into impermanence doesn't mean to be caught in impermanence, because impermanence can become a view that you are caught in. And then you think that impermanence is something bad. But in fact, impermanence doesn't mean there isn't a continuation. Things change their form into a different form, and there's always continuation. The rain we listen to now is the continuation of the cloud. In Buddhism in China, they used to say there's two kinds of awakening. There's the sudden enlightenment, and there's the gradual enlightenment. I don't understand the Plum Village teachings in that way. We can have little enlightenments every day that come to us when we practice mindful walking and mindful breathing. We can become enlightened a little bit every day. We don't have to wait for a sudden enlightenment. And we don't have to think that at the end of a long, gradual enlightenment, we will become enlightened. Because the Bodhi, the enlightenment, is present in each of us. And we can, with our own practice of dwelling in the present moment, mindfulness of walking, mindfulness of breathing, that enlightenment is always, insight can always come up. With mindfulness and concentration, there can always be insight. So we should not miss the opportunity of guided meditation, walking meditation. That is our aspiration, always to remain fresh, not to grow tired of the practice, not to find the practice boring. That feeling of boredom, of being tired of the practice, it comes from our own mind. We need to open our mind a little bit more in order to be able to give ourselves the opportunity to use the Dharma doors that have been given to us in order to help us have insight. And that insight will bring us encouragement and help us to continue a long time on the path. And of course we can always renew our practice. We can always have new ideas about how to practice. We need to be creative in our practice. If you use a knife, cutting carrots every day, it will get blunt after a while. You need to sharpen it again. If you just keep using the blunt knife, it's like just keep the outer form, but you don't have the content anymore. As long as the practice has the content, and it's not the outer form, it will always nourish you and nourish others as well. So dear friends, thank you for listening. We'll now hear 3 sounds of the bell.